Labą dieną, mėly kolegos. Sveikiname su atstovais iš įvairių šalies nacionalinių sporto šakų federacijų. Ačiū labai, kad suradote laiko prisijungti prie mūsų šiandienos susitikimo. Labai atsiprašome, kad vėluojamės pusę valandos, tačiau dėl nenumatytų aplinkybių, kaip jums pranešėme elektroniniu paštu, dėl to, kad vėlavo lėktuvas ir mūsų svečias tiesiog yra iš oro uosto atvežtas pas mus į susitikimą. Tai gyvenimas padiktuoja savo taisyklės kartais ir turime prie jų prisitaikyti. Tai iš tikrųjų labai simboliška matyti, mes dar šiais metais nekalbėjome gerojo valdymo principų tematiką, tačiau bet kokiu atveju jau esame tame kelyje, kuomet teikiame pasiūlymus aukšto meistriškumo grupiai dėl vadybos dalies, dėl to mūsų perspektyvos arba ateities vertinimų kriterijų ir būtinybės visgi mums šitą temą ir toliau plėtoti. Ačiū tiems, kurie jau esate ir atstovaujate savo federacijas kaip gerojo valdymo principų atstovai. Tai yra federacijos, kurios atsiuntėte konkrečius asmenys ir tada mums tiesiog palaikyta ryšį yra žymiai paprasčiau ir matyt nukrauti tam tikras galbūt funkcijas nuo jūsų pagrindinių žmonių, generalinių sekretorių. Ir aišku, drąsinam ir aktyvinam visas federacijas turėti tuos žmonės, kurie būtų tie gerieji, kaip sakyti, gerųjų žinių ir gerųjų principų diegėjai. Taigi mes šitu pirmuoju mūsų susitikimu pradedame šių metų gerojo valdymo principų diegimo vystymą ir šiandien su mumis, matote mus ekrane, yra, čia pristatysiu ne pirmą, bet paskutinį šį kartą, yra Mrkonjičas, aukšto meistriškumo skyriaus vadovas, yra kompetencijų centro vyriausias specialistas Albertas Savanevičius, yra Nacionalinės sporto agentūros pirmoji praktikantė, kurią mes turime šį pavasario semestrą reziduojančią pas mus, tai yra Diana Zagainova. Ir turime mūsų svečią ir matyt dabar aš jau pereisiu ir į anglų kalbą. Tai dar apie darbotvarkę norėčiau pasakyti. Mes neturime kokio tai, pristatymo, skaidrių, dėstymo, kaip paskaitos, sakykime, ir panašiai. Daugiau yra šiandien dienai, toks apskrito stalo formatas, tai yra daugiau kalbėjimosi, supratimo, aiškinimosi, klausimų, atsakymų, komentarų, bet tema mūsų yra aiški. Taip, tema yra aiški, tai yra gero valdymo principų užsienio šalyse patirtis. Ir dar kartelį mes grįžtam prie būtinybės arba kodėl mes apie tai kalbam ir prie naudų. Tai reiškia, kaip sakom, kas iš to ir dėl ko mes turėtumėm tuos principus įdiegę toliau organizacijose vystyti įvairias veiklas ir tada atsiekti tos kokybės, kurios laukia mūsų visos suinteresuotųjų grupės. Taigi, pradedam mūsų apskritą stalą ir aišku patį pirmą tokį pristatymą ir patirties pasidalinimą padarys mūsų svečias ir tada mes turėsime matyti ir čia tarpusavėje tam tikrų klausimų ir atsakymų komentarų ir aišku, jūs galite užduoti klausimus per pokalbių kambarį, per chatą ir tada mes juos galėsime ištransliuoti ir atrasti patį tinkamiausią jums ir rūpimiausią atsakymą. So, I'm switching to the English language. And I am very happy today to see national sports federations around the table remotely, but still keeping an interest to share and to hear the practice what our guest speaker of today, Dr. Mrkonjič, is ready to share with you. So, Michael, is your floor to present yourself and your expertise in this particular topic, because you are dealing with the other topics as well, and spread those, good practices, as well as possibly, and not sometimes good, even bad practices, in order to avoid the mistakes what we are seeing in our cases, in our activities. So, Michael, floor is yours, and we are happy that you are here with us today.
Sure.
Very good.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. As Vilma said, my name is Mrkonjič. I come from Switzerland, and I have several hats. And I will try in this room to share my experience with these several hats that I have. The first hat that I have is that I'm a researcher. So on the topic that we will discuss today, I did my PhD 10 years ago on good governance of European sports federations at the University of Lausanne. And I'm still working on this topic with different publications. So I'm also trying to... Sorry, yeah, this happens.
Yeah, sometimes.
No problem. And this research perspective is very interesting to share, because I had some discussions with representatives of different national federations, how they see the implementation of good governance principles at local level, especially when we are talking about sport clubs, for instance. I have another hat. That is head of division sports economics, also vice rector of my institute in Switzerland, the Swiss Federal Institute of Sports. And I had the privilege and the chance to be in close contact also with my colleagues from the legal department and also the policy or political department that have been involved in framing the new law on sport. This is an important point, because we experienced in the last couple of years different changes in the law that are orienting the activities of sports federations, especially national sports federations, toward good governance principles for implementation. So the idea of my input here, I have no slides. It's not because I didn't have the time. Sometimes it's also good just to share some experience and then to discuss, is to talk a little bit about Switzerland, and then how we experienced the situation in Switzerland, what were the triggers to change something in the system, and what are the barriers that hinder sports organizations like the National Olympic Committee, like national sports federations, or like clubs, to implement something that we call good governance in sports. And with this introduction, I would like to take the last sentence that I said, what we call good governance in sport. We are at the end of 1990s. There has been a huge scandal in the Olympic system. You're certainly aware about this, the Salt Lake City scandal, corruption scandal, and the bribes that occurred at that time had a very negative image on Olympism, but more specifically on the IOC. And how the IOC reacted is that the members of the session or the executive committee decided to initiate a project that has been called IOC Commission 2000. with 50 recommendations. How Olympism should now be organized, what values should drive Olympism, abstraction from the Olympic Charter. Right? The Olympic Charter is something that drives the values of Olympism since decades, but here we have a specific document with 50 recommendations on the role of athletes, respectively new role of athletes, on inclusion, on the organization of sport events, etc. And then you have something that is called term limits. And you have the first discussions at that time on limiting the time that people should be invested with powers in a sports organization by saying that the more time you bring in the organization, the more you are susceptible to be corrupted. Roughly right. So term limits started to be something at the time that was not called good governance per se, but term limits in the reform to what extent the IOC should be organized. But then you have a couple of initiatives, then you have a couple of conferences, then you have the Council of Europe that comes in 2004, 2005 with this narrative on good governance of sport and how national sports organizations or other organizations should be organized. We start to talk about democracy, we start to talk about transparency, we start to talk about participation. Term limits is always there. We start to talk about age limits. Then you have some resistances to say, yeah, but the age per se is not something that should be limited. If the president has an experience to share, let's share this experience. It's not the age per se that is problematic, it's rather the time that you spend in the organization. And it can be also discriminatory. So if you say you limit the age for something, but at this time, you have these huge principles that are communicated, that are shared in documents, in conventions, in declarations. You have guidelines that are published. So we are here in 2005, 2004 with the Council of Europe doing a huge pressure on sports organization. And as I said, because now perhaps you say, yeah, but you come from Switzerland, you wanted to share something about Switzerland. This is true. In Switzerland, we have something at that time that is called an ethics charter. We have 7 principles. We have principles on don't drink alcohol, don't take drugs, be respectful, include, don't harm. And we are not talking about good governance in sport in Switzerland at that time. We are talking about ethic in sport. Something that is deeply anchored also in Olympic values, in how sport should be organized. So you have one movement on the international level, Olympic level, good governance. You have ethics in Switzerland, but to some extent, both match because the idea is to organize the sport in a better way. It's not about performance. It's not about medals. It's not about, how you say this, grassroots sports. It's something about how sport is accepted in a society, how sport mirrors the society. So you have a fight against doping that is also an older discourse already from the 70s, also in ancient games. You had people that practiced sport in ancient Greece that took some wine and some products to be better, to perform. But now we are in a situation, we want a better sport, we want a more ethical sport, we want a sport organized under good governance principles. And the problem here is that you have, of course, countries that participate to the European debate on good governance in sports, because the Council of Europe, you have close to 50 members. These members decide, these members act, these members share information. But at the time, the problem is, and perhaps this is the discussion today that is important for you, it's the implementation. Because as we say in research also, I would like to live in theory, because in theory, everything is fine. But when you go to the daily business, that's when you have to think about, okay, democracy, how should yet I implement like 20 indicators of democracy in my small club, voluntary organized. My father is the president, my son is playing, we are 5 in the committee, and actually our goal is just to have members. It's not now to try to implement some information or some guidelines that somebody somewhere at the very higher level tries to discuss, to develop, and to implement. And the discussion on the international level goes on. You have different scandals that occurred. We know about the situation at the time with FIFA. The situation at FIFA was a very strong driver for changing the system. I will not go into details here, but you have kind of scandals that occur in several sports, not football exclusively, in several sports, that pushes the narrative, the discourse, and the need to change something. But at the time you had a situation very interesting. We are talking about 2010, 2011, where we had kind of federations that have resources, that had power, that have the structure, that have the people, that could implement the change within. So when we talk about the FIFA reform at the time, with different committees that were created, with checks and balances, etc., you are talking about a federation, an international federation that is rich, that has a budget over a couple of $billion, and you have with the rest. Well, you have the IOC also in this group, but you have the rest of federation, not so much money, not so much resources. But the problem at the time, what was important to me, that's more the hat of the researcher, is that one situation disseminated in the whole system the need to change. And because the FIFA issue was so strong in the media that the people associated the case, again, it's my interpretation, associated the case specific to football to the whole system. So the system is corrupt, but at the end of the day, the case per se was one organization. Then again, there were other international federations with some issues, perhaps also on national level. But that was very important to understand, because good governance is about also acceptance. And the organization that have to, or are invited to, or are recommended to do something, they should understand that something is acceptable, that something is legitimate for them also. It's not the contribution to the system is important here. It's, yeah, but at the end of the day, it comes to me. It knocks at my door and I receive a list of something and I should do this, what is written on the list. And time goes. Several countries are trying to implement good governance principles in different configurations, sometimes with the law, sometimes with guidelines, sometimes with the necessity to do something only. And in Switzerland, nothing very much happened, honestly. We had to wait. 3 years ago, we had a small issue, not small, an issue with one specific sports federation. There was an issue that exists in many other sports. It was in gymnastics, but it's also in the media. It's nothing something confidential. But we had an issue between young gymnasts and a couple of coaches. And there was one journalist that reported a case. And the media was very, very angry about this system. The citizens were very angry. We had very, very important issues at the time. And I think now you understand my narrative. There is always something, a driver, a trigger that invites the system to change, or forces the system to change according to the power or the strength of this trigger. I come back to Salt Lake City scandal. Within the IOC, one member received money from the local organizing committee in exchange to vote. FIFA, you know a bit the situation, and now we have again a driver, something strong in the system we have to change. And from that point, more or less three years ago, the legal framework started to change. The actors of the national sports system have been invited in several discussions, in several projects, in several committees, trying to find a solution how to deal with this ethical issue and what are the measures that could be implemented in order to hinder that this case between coaches and gymnasts never happens again in the sport, but also in the whole system. And I had the chance a bit to be involved in this project, and what we did at the time, or what the people that were driving this project at the time did, is first to create a common understanding on what is good governance, what is ethics, what are we talking about. And the first report that has been published, that is available online, in German and in French, talks about this common understanding. How does a kid understand ethics or good governance? He perhaps understands something about ethics from his parents. He understands something about ethics from his coach, from perhaps a fair play charter that is somewhere in the gym on the wall with 5 principles that he should respect. But I'm not sure that the 12-year-old kid understands what good governance is with democracy, participation. My son is 12, and I can guarantee that he has no idea what this means. But ethics, yes, more or less, because it's kind of education, it's oriented on values, it's the parents, what are they doing, how are they sharing their culture, how are they communicating. Something happens also in the sport club. And then you have other organizations, national sports federations, and I think that they have another understanding on what is ethics, what is good governance, especially in the international sports system, because the representative of national sports federations, of course, are also represented in the International Sport Federation, and you had a lot of international sports federations that pushed the discourse for good governance in sport. It was my former PhD supervisor, Jean-Loup Chaplet. He drove this project with ASOIF Good Governance Principles. Perhaps, I'm sure you've been involved to some extent in this construct. And there is something clear with 50 recommendations, with the series of indicators, with benchmark analysis. So I think that at this national level, there is something that is understandable, that somebody at the National Federation can say, okay, I understand it, I can try to implement it in my own reality. And why I say this is that because this is the main issue that I believe is now something that will be very difficult to resolve, is who is responsible for what. And at the end of the day, to what extent can you bring this narrative that has been developed rather at the top, not from the bottom, from the grassroots, rather at the top, to find a common understanding to be implemented at the end of the day, and I say at the end of the day off, but here on a sustainable way. That sport clubs, that National Sports Federation on a sustainable way can anchor this principle as a mindset, as something that drives the organization. I'm a former elite basketball player, so I know the sport also. We laughed because we were talking about Jasikevičius. It's not very good said, but I was.
Now it's better.
It's better, okay. I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of Žalgiris Kaunas, and I have a bit this elite sport mindset, but basketball in Switzerland is not like in France or in Lithuania. But the mindset, elite sports, performance is something that drives. It's something that is very important. And the issue is a bit to position also good governance, like value-oriented, that perhaps does not match with performance. Perhaps it's something else to match in the strategy, in the mindset of the organization, and then to try to disseminate it at grassroots level, at the last level, at my son's level, 12 years old, playing basketball in a club. And I think that this issue is the issue to resolve, and this is something now that is in discussion in Switzerland. So in the current law, then I conclude with my short introduction. In the law today in Switzerland, the Swiss Olympic, the National Olympic Committee, and the National Federation, they have to respect good governance principles. It's anchored in law. These good governance principles are more or less limited to 10, especially principles related to transparency, organizational transparency, so information on people that work in the national sports federations, at Swiss Olympic, term limits, and gender inclusion, gender representation. For gender representation, we have a threshold of 40% of decision makers in 40%, yeah? 40. The National Sports Federation had more or less 2 years to implement this threshold. If they do not implement this threshold, they still have a bit time to try to force the change in the organization. But at the end of the day, if they don't implement it, there will be an issue with financing their activities on specific criteria, on this specific criteria. So you have here enforcement of good governance that is anchored in law with a sanction. But you cannot do the same with sport clubs. We have in Switzerland 20,000 sport clubs. You coordinate in Switzerland 85 national sports federations that are members of the Swiss Olympic Committee, the National Olympic Committee, and National Sport Agency. You have more or less 80 that are not in this system, the other boccia, for instance. But sport clubs, you have 20,000 in Switzerland. Sports clubs, they are very close to regional associations. Sport clubs have many issues, and their issue, as I said at the beginning, and then I will close the speech, is find members, find people that just have time to devote to their sport clubs. My father, myself, my son, this is the typical small sport club that you have. And when you come with good governance criteria and say you have to have term limits, I would answer, yeah, but my problem is to find people first and then to discuss about term limits. So this is a bit the situation in Switzerland that I wanted to share with you. And it's okay for you. So, and I'm done. Thank you very much. And I'm here to answer, to share whatever I can share. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. It was a really great overview from the very beginning, from IOC, from the year 1998, 2000, when they started this action. And do we have any questions so far? Not yet, because it was so concentrated and clear. Do we have some reflections? Yeah, Marius, because
not maybe reflection, but straight from to start with some questions. I mean, that arise when you talked, and just in general, then we think and talk between colleagues about good governance principles. So first of all, you mentioned that in Switzerland, some around 10 principles are implemented in law. And we have the same discussion, I mean, in our ministry and in our national sports agency. Which way is better? I mean, just to force, I mean, organizations to do, I mean, to seek these goals through the law, or to give, let's say, we can cookie for achieving these. So, I mean, from your experience, which method is, I mean, better? I mean, not talking only maybe about Switzerland, because you said that it's in the law, but from your experience, I mean, in other maybe countries, which method is, I mean, giving better results and let's say faster?
So it's the historic dilemma, the carrot or the button.
Yeah.
I understand. It's a very good question. I think that the button now works or will work because the button is related to subsidies, and national sports federations or other sports actors, they would need subsidies. So if somebody comes and tells you, if you don't do it, then you will not receive something, then of course there is a pressure to reform. And what we have seen is that in many Anglo-Saxon countries, it works like this. So if you go to Australia or the UK, so this is a bit the system that has been implemented by Sport England or the other agency, Australian Sports Commission, etc. But what is important is that all these organizations have tried to implement a tiered approach, which means that you cannot harmonize or take every organization on a same level. So they have a tiered approach according to the size, according to the budget, and you will set different types of criteria, respectively different threshold for smaller organizations, for instance. At the end of the day, they will be sanctioned if they don't respect. But there is always a gray zone, a buffer zone. Like I said, in Switzerland, it's time. So you have perhaps 2 years, you have 3 years. It's a bit corporate governance oriented, but you have a bit this approach, comply or explain. I can do it. Okay, very good. You are not sanctioned. I cannot do it. Okay, explain why. Okay, I didn't have the strategy. Okay, I didn't have the people. Okay, we understand. We give you a bit more time. So the button works. There are examples that it works, but it's not like for everybody it's the same. So you always have to cut a bit the reality of the organization that have to implement something. I am a believer that, or I believe that information, communication, prevention should be implemented in any case. So you need to convince, you need to communicate, because your goal is not to grip the system at the end of the day, because when the organization doesn't receive the money, this has an impact on the sport performance, it has an impact on the athlete, etc. It's the escalation in the system that is very well known. So you still have, although you have the carrot or the button, you still have to implement some communication measures. You have to explain that it's good for the organization. You have to understand the organization. So you need to build an architecture of knowledge where you explain that if you don't do it, you will be sanctioned, but the organization will help also to achieve the organization to implement the reform. And this is a bit the case in Switzerland. So we should not understand the situation as binary as it is, do it or die. It's okay, that is our expectation. There is a risk, but we are also here to support, to help, to achieve something that is great, that's something that we believe.
Yeah, so I'm just want to reflect what you said. Yeah, so that's why we are talking here. I mean, that's and I would say that we use more or less the same approach. I mean, we understand that we can jump from, I mean, basic level to the top level, that we just start to talk about good government principles, and from start 1 year later, we want all organizations would understand the benefits and would implement all of the principles we believe are beneficial. So yeah, we have some principles that are already in our law. I mean, some basic principles, but we want to show the benefits. That's why we are talking here and try to show them benefits. So yeah, we use more or less the same approach with education, with talking, and of course understanding that it takes time to seek some develop some developments here. Yeah, so yeah, just a reflection. Yeah.
No, it's excellent, and I would like to bounce back to what you say about your situation, and we didn't talk about the carrots. And I think
what are the carrots?
The carrot is who needs the carrot, and who needs the carrot are the sports clubs that don't have the resources to implement. So you have two levels: the organization, perhaps national sports federation, that are professionalized, that are structured, that have people behind. As I said before, it's important to have people that drive the change, that implement the change. But sports clubs, you cannot sanction if they already don't have the money to do something. So this is very interesting in our situation, and this is one aspect that also refrained the law to go too deep for sports clubs. So the law is on this level of Olympic Committee, National Sports Federation, but it leaves some room for the implementation at clubs level. And here I'm proponent for the carrot approach, to say, okay, if you do something, if you do term limits, if you have some criteria that are anchored in law, then you receive some subsidies or more money to do something, and then the club will be happy. And then you can also work with the communication, say it's good for you, and we support you. So,
yeah, very similar situation. I mean, we are just let's say in the middle of discussion, and this offer is, I mean, on the table. I mean, to offer, I mean, national federations, if you seek with, I mean, good governance criteria, I mean, you receive additional subsidies. I mean, if you don't do okay, we still talking about the benefits. I mean, still trying to explain you that it's not about only getting more money, but it's also good, I mean, in long term. So yeah, so very, very similar. Of course, it's only on the table, not in some, I mean, in the law or in any, I mean, rules, but I mean, many federations agree with that principle that would work better, I mean, than bottom.
Yeah, they're not against, or they're not protesting that it's not our business and we will try somehow to avoid. No, they agree. They only they need, you know, some, well, first of all, technical support or educational support. And as you said, you know, how to reach that mutual understanding, you know, between the state or governance and the federation. So what are the expectations from both sides? And here we need to discuss more, to make more consultation, more expertise, more explanations, so to create that architecture of knowledge, as you said. I liked it very much. Yeah, but and we just started last year, you know, with that big way, a long way to go, but we understand the necessity and the importance what we are doing, and we see, you know, the light in the end of the day. So step by step, you know, inviting experts like you, creating some, you know, articles, organizing some seminars and some you know, expertise and so on. We should say that federations, they really try to make efforts to go one step forward. Somehow we try to find that common sense.
I think that the situation changes. I remember this project where I've been involved from Jens Andersen from Play the Game at the time. So Action for Good Governance in International Sports Organizations, something like that. And we started with this benchmark analysis. And at that time, it was in 2013, at that time, the narrative was, if we benchmark, we name and shame, and if we shame, the organization will change. And I think that this narrative, I said 10 years ago, it's not current anymore. So because you are talking about the benefits. The benefit is something broader than that, to say, okay, I am afraid to be shamed because my fellow federation do better, etc. It's something that should help the organization to perform in several aspects related to values. Good governance is something that is good per se. It costs something, it costs resources, it costs energy, but it's something that is for good. And to make sports organization to understand that is, the key message to share, that it's a benefit for the organization based on the value that you share within the organization. And we also discussed about, you can write something in your statutes, like 5 principles, etc. We are fantastic, we do, but you have to live it at the end of the day. And one key discussion that we had in Switzerland with this project to reform the law and the common understanding of what is ethics and good governance is really to live it and to feel at individual level that, for me, Michael Mrkonjič, that comes at 7 o'clock at his office, that he knows that there is something that drives him, that drives the team, that drives the organization, that drives at the end of the day the system. And we are all imperfect people or organizations. I do mistakes. We do mistakes. And I don't think that it's good to pinpoint, to say, you did a mistake, you're bad. No, it's okay. I try to do better. I try to be part of a greater project in a country, in a sport system, at my club level, that will be good for the members, practitioners, etc. And I think that's very important to this narrative, this value that good governance drives. It's something for the better, but it costs something. Of course, it costs something.
Okay, do we have any comments? No, everyone is.
Sorry.
It was just pretty, let's say, it was very clear, explained. So
okay.
Yeah, it was like really well explained. Experience, and also I think all the relations, they know the principles, how to say it, like bringing some links and some topics, and we speak with the relations about it. It's more maybe interesting to hear how does it work, and also how you do it.
And the issue is a time, so we would like to make that process faster, to speed up. But we understand from a governance point of view that from a state point of view, we would like, to see those, changes, positive changes faster. But on the other hand, we understand that it takes time, and federations, knowing that probably in the future they will be supported more for this, what is good for them. They might even, make some more, efforts of in that implementation process, because it really takes, first of all, it takes not only time, it takes some resources, and federations, especially when they are small. Well, there are big federations and there are small federations. And we already last year, we organized we made an investigation, we organized seminars, and we discussed very similar issues, what we are now discussing, that we can't insist the same amount and scope of the principles to those federations who operate on a 2 million budget and those who operate on 20,000 euros, and their capacities are completely different. So we should find out the system of differentiation and give them a time and somehow to follow and to make that consultation for them to progress in their own way of the development. So the only what we really need from the federation, it's a goodwill, goodwill and mutual understanding that we are both in the same boat and we try to row the same direction. So this is like a little bit political speech, but still, and when the National Sport Agency has been launched almost, well, not almost, 1.5 years ago, the special, activity in the government program was written that the competent center should be created in order to foster, to foster the implementation, to promote the implementation of good governance. So our national government dedicated a task for the agency to do the job. So now we are trying to do our job the best way we can in terms of our understanding and capacities, and just probably now it's the right time to give a big applause to Michael, because when I and my master student, we made the first investigation of good governance in 2014, exactly 10 years ago. We used Michael's scale of evaluation, and we made a reference to this scale, we made that investigation not through all our scope was only strategic sports federation. At that time there were 14, and I think 11 responded, so we have a very targeted random. And and we used your scale, and after there is a scientific article published, and the story is that we are 3 co-authors in the article, and we discussed about the language. Should we publish in Lithuanian or should we publish in English? And for us, as from academicians, it's very important to publish in English because we are receiving more points because of the internationalization of the science. But in the end of the day, we decided to publish in Lithuanian in order to open more opportunities for national federations and people to read on their native language. So somehow we sacrifice our academic ambitions, but we let people to be more knowledgeable in this particular topic. Yeah, but that was exactly 10 years ago, and now I am in a position not only from a research point of view, but in an implementation process on behalf of the state, to keep that dialogue with the federation, which is very important. And in this process, we, in fact, last year we funded 66 national sport federation. This year, more or less the same. But there are some, federations which are, well, outside. So we are calculating around 80 federations, more or less, in Lithuania. So we are really open to all of them, to be consulted. We invite to seminars, to our different activities, and we are ready to provide any support they need. But at the same time, as Marius is saying, that we would like to, 1 year, 2 years, to see the progress of the change to the better, and somehow to initiate federations to be satisfied of their own growth. So good governance is about positive change and about growth. So this is, I think it's so interesting to develop an organization. It's something, very creative, very innovative, very, positive. And sometimes federations are lacking people, but they have their communities, they have their clubs, their representatives, their athletes, and people should somehow to sacrifice, to develop organization for the better. Okay, do we have any comments? No,
not yet. I have one reflection.
Please,
Just from your experience, because we have different experience with seeking for some changes. So how we can measure. We have a baseline. Vilma and Albertas did a great job. To measure the baseline. What's the baseline? What's the situation of our national federations? Before we start all this, let's say, project. And okay, we do some seminars, we do some, some consultation and so on, and we can measure what is the progress. But as far as I understood from your talk, the main thing is, to change attitude. You can do things just to put tick. Did this? Especially if you get a carrot for doing this. So how to see difference that the organization is doing things only to get that carrot, and to see that organization doing things that believe that that the attitude is, that you said, that this drives the organization. And of course, to change attitude is one process, mentality. And so can you share some aspect of that, to do things just because I get some subsidies extra, and to do things that I'm believing that I'm going to the next level, and long term I will get money, but more money, but still will get any benefits. So what's your thoughts?
Right.
No, the question is you, but you may still have some time to think. You mentioned several times, and I fixed, this, good pearls of your introductory speech, that we're speaking about values and beliefs. So how to reconstruct the system that people, responsible people in a federations, they do the job not because they must, or not because of the carrot, but because they really believe from the heart. But the board of federation and the community of that particular sport, they are acting on a values. And when we made an investigation last year about strategic plans, I reviewed all strategic plans of each federation, and we indicated, and we should recognize that some federations, they do not even point the values. So probably values are missing at this, stage. So again, this is another issue to talk about, but yeah, you should believe what you are doing and be, ready to keep going on those beliefs and values. But this is your point, and
Thank you very much for the question. Three things. The first thing is that it is not constructive to erase the sport-specific values. Sport-specific values are team sport, individual sport, historical dependency, dynamics, respect among each other, etc. So you have sport-specific values. I would not say that, judo, for instance, one of my colleagues comes from judo. We know, or I know, it's very oriented on values, respect, etc. Cultural oriented, from Asia, Japan or Asia. And let's say other values, shooting. In Switzerland, we love shooting. I don't shoot, but we love shooting. There are a lot of people that shoot. It's not something bad or wrong. It's just shooting has its own values. Every sport has its own values. What we are talking here is the common values that we try to find among all sports, not to say you have to change your roots, you have to change what you have constructed 100 years ago. It's just to say there is a social expectation, there is something that is going on in the system, a value that transcends sport practice, the practice of sport. We keep the value specific to the sport in track and field, athletics, basketball, football, etc. But there is something perhaps that is common to all. This is the first thing that I think that it's important to keep in mind, not to frighten the organization that have to change their identity. They have to keep it. It's like this. It's culture, it's symbols, it's a lot of things behind that. The culture of the sport specific to the federation should remain. But there is this expectation. And there is this expectation for the good. It's a magnificent value. It's something good governance, something for the better. And the second part is external oriented. It's among the sports federation, to my opinion, is that if 50 sports organizations can do it, the other can do it also. If it's like top tier, like you said, perhaps you do one group of top federations should respect something, another group should respect perhaps a bit less. But if you have a group of federations that can do it, normally there should be no reason why the other cannot do it. And this is a bit the snowball effect in the system. So if you have a critical group of organizations that drive something, then the rest will also follow, potentially. But with respecting the question of resources, specificities, issues, event-oriented, grassroots-oriented, etc. So this is a bit leadership by example, but on a comparative perspective. But the most important, to my opinion, it's not like science or something that is explicitly evidence-based, but it's leadership bit from the top within the organization. I think that the sport system is not now in Switzerland, I know it very well, it's not ready for so holocratic structures where everybody decides. It's top down, where you have a committee, you have a president, you have vice presidents, you have heads of, you have people that work on the field, etc. But if the president or the vice presidents or the general manager don't drive the message to the end, it will be very difficult for the whole organization, the collaborators, to understand the benefits or the why are we doing something. And for a sustainable perspective, this is a bit in conflict now with term limits and sustainability. You know very well, better than me, the rotation principle, 4 years, 8 years, whatever, 2 years, 2 years, whatever. But in order to contradict or to face this issue of rotation, where a person goes away and then you lose the drive on the values, you should convince the people that are there for 15, 20 years, the collaborators that are hired, that have a contract, that work there, and they have to drive the message that comes from the top, from a president, from a vice president, to understand it. And I think that is key, something you say also, it takes time, yes. First, the leadership has to be convinced, but you have also to think about rotations and what happens after the president leaves. And there are a lot of now policies that have been implemented. Perhaps you have it, I don't know, but not in Switzerland, but in the UK, or you have this nomination committee.
Oh yeah.
Nomination committee, and wow, it's a question of composition. And discuss that, but it's not the point. But nomination committee try to filter a little bit this issue. Say, okay, the person that will be elected or that is candidate for a position has the profile to drive the change on a sustainable way. And this is a bit the message, how to convince about the benefits. The leadership should be convinced first, and then should show the example. It's like the parents and the children. If the parents tell you don't drink and the parents drink, yeah, but you have to. It's perhaps stupid, but it's like this. It's like in real life. So if you communicate something, I think that it's good to live and to be convinced, to show the good example first, and then you can communicate and have legitimacy, communicate something for the change, not just buzzwords. Do it because it's nice. Do it because I'm convinced that it's something good, and I live it also in the daily business. Yep.
What about that, gender, equality, the point we've been discussing, gender and age.
To include, young people.
We would like to include, people, what is young, up to 35. We count because at European, Union, level, up to 35. So gender, age, and
Athletes.
what?
Athlete representative.
Yeah. Thank you. So Marius is, reading my mind because we're working together so close. Yeah. Well, athletes representation, we now already progressing, and federations really, sometimes you see the evidence and you can't believe that until we did not started to talk about, some federations even did not think that they should, I don't say must, that they should involve athletes in a committee, in a board. But when we started to talk, they said, okay, this is a good idea. We will do that. It seems like a paradox. But so athletes already, more or less, athletes already are welcome to the management of the federation. So at the same time, gender, especially when we speak about those more male sports and more female sports, how to balance this, composition in terms of gender and age, because we would like, to renew or to see more younger persons. What is your experience?
Not much, I'm sorry. No, but we have also discussion in Switzerland about athletes representation. It's a huge issue, historical also issue, because athletes are the core of the sport. Without athletes, there is no sport. And it's a question of perception. If you think that athletes should practice only and their duty is to be on the field, or you say they have something to say, they have an experience to share within the organization. It's just a quick example. It won't take too long. When I played basketball in a sports club, it was in the first division, and we were in the locker room, and we were not very happy with the coach at the time, and with the players. We discussed about the coach. My father was coach 40 years, 40 years coach. I really understand the coaches in basketball, but I understand. So I respect the coaches, the player, everybody. But we were a bit critical against the coaches. I was young also at the time, and against the coach. And I started to discuss with my fellow players, say, yeah, what do you think? Should we, as players, have a say in the executive committee? That we can say that this coach is not the best for the team. And I would not say it was innovative. I had no idea about good governance, athletes representation. It was just instinct. And I had a call from the general manager the day after, because in the locker room there was one person that read the information at the top, and I was not doing very well at that time. I was not performing very well, but that's something else. And I had a call from the general manager, and the general manager said, your role is to play and not to tell us what we have to do in the board. And I think that this example, as it is 20 years ago, should be a little bit discussed, because I think that there are possibilities to create athletes commission. There are possibilities to have seats for the athletes. It's my opinion. I encourage this. It's also based on the activities that we have in Mrkonjič at the Federal Institute. But I will rather think about the concept of empowerment. So to do what can the athlete bring, and how do you guarantee athlete representation? Perhaps, I don't know, because I see a lot of names, perhaps you are not agree with what I'm saying, but it's a question to have a seat. It's another to say, how does the governance function? What is the role? Is it a consultative vote? Just say what you think, but don't think too much. Or is it really empowerment, where you say the athlete has a decision-making position within the commission or in the executive board, and to convince that this can be something good for good governance? So we had also a lot of discussion about that, but really empowerment of the athlete and the really specific role in a committee is very important. For the age groups, it's very innovative. Honestly, in Switzerland, we have young athletes committees or commissions in sport in the canton of Buvo, where I live. It's a region. A group of young people that discuss different topics, but there is no example that I know where you include younger people in decision-making bodies. This would be very innovative, and also think about the role of these young people, because it's the future also. And I think that there are also generation shifts, and the younger people bring new idea. It can be interesting in terms of value, what they think is good about good governance, how it can change the mindset, the organization. But I will try to collect evidence, a lot of evidence on the benefits and the hindrances about such a move, because athletes representation is something that is historically anchored, discussed for decades. There is a lot of publication about that, and this age groups until 35 is something perhaps new.
Are you agree up to 35 or up to 29 or up to, what is a young age for you?
No,
sorry about this primary question, but we've been discussing, because based on some sociological distribution of the society, it's one point. Based on scientific, approaches on the other side, from a political point of view, when you apply through European Commission on a Youth for Action program, you know, they very clear say that the youth is up to 35, you know.
Yeah.
So it's 18 and 35 is different.
Yeah. So I understand. I have an example. In our institution, we have students representatives in our decision-making boards at master's level, bachelor level, etc. It doesn't work very well because the match between the expectation of the students and the professors and the decision-making body is not very optimal. So they are here. It's democratic. It's okay. I fully believe in this. But you see in the meetings that nothing comes where they listen and what. So the age based on this experience, because it's master students, bachelor students, like 8, 20, 22, 24, they are young. But what they bring is discutable. So the age per se, 35 or 30, for me, it's difficult to say there is a good age. For me, it's really what do you bring? How do you bring the imperatives of your generation in the decision making? So it can be 20, it can be 30, perhaps 36, I don't know, but it's really about what they can bring. But understand that there must be or should be a criteria to say up to that age, we consider that this person is young. It's like in Switzerland, so you are in other countries with 65, the state tells you stop to work. Mostly because you cost too much, but stop to work at 65, you have many persons that say, yeah, but I can work until 70, 75, but the state tells you. Yeah. But this is something that did not evolve very much. 65 is kind of something that is anchored in our culture. But the reflection on the other side for age groups, of course, if you have 15-year-old people in decision-making bodies of sports clubs, it's perhaps difficult. Yeah. Perhaps you need elder ones. But I'm sorry, I cannot give you.
And what about gender, the proportion? So in your case, it's 40-60.
40-60, yes.
So 40 is for
women.
At least.
At least.
Yes. So
as a minimum.
Yeah,
as a minimum.
Yeah, the fun fact when we discussed about the good governance principles, and we came to that principle with gender equality. Yeah, and okay, the goal is to seek 50-50, but then usually in the executive committee, an even number of members, so you can't reach that 50-50 level. So then we understood that if there is 5, let's say, members in the executive committee, that's 40, at least 40, both. Genders, at least, So that the fact that's the same number, and I also would like to add some maybe opinion about inclusion athletes. Executive bodies. It's from my view of point, it's that it's two-way traffic. Not only good for organization, but also for athletes to see how when decisions are made. To hear the arguments and to see that it's not everything so easy. That sometimes athletes think that there are. Choices, resources always are limited, and you need to make priorities and to do sometimes unpleasant choices. So that inclusion could bring more understanding also to athletes, let's say community, to see how the organizations are ruled. How the decisions are made, and of course to get experience and to see, and of course to bring opinions to organizations. So to first step, is to show, and to share their ideas, their point of view of the situations, but of course, and to get the experience and to see how organization is working. So I think it's first step just to include athletes. of course, there are some organizations that athletes maybe are not too active, maybe still not too experienced, but yeah, we are just doing let's say first steps, and experience will come. But yeah, that's the point. I mean, from my perspective.
Ar turime kokių iš savęs dar klausimų iš gero valdymo?
Ne, gal kažkas iš svečių norėtų kažko paklausti.
Federacijų. Nedrįsta.
We try to, encourage them in speaking, national language. And probably some comments or questions arises. As you mentioned, Greg Bostvina is coming next week to Switzerland to you. So he is, we are speaking about the person, the president of the Institute of Governance, of Sport Governance in Poland. So Greg was a leader and in charge for European convergent goals of good governance. So it was a project where this code has been created during 2 years, and now there are another 2 years dedicated for a new project, Action Plus, where we as an agency are a partner of this project. So we're just in time, completing our government task, understanding what we have to go through the educational process, but at the same time, we're so happy to be involved. Project is successful. We are funded from European Commission, and during another 2 years, there are several, very interesting actions about mentorship, about specific consultation, days and common events and so on and so forth foreseen during the next 2 years. So we do hope that those, 5 dimensions, and there are 20 principles out of 57 from Play the Game and from Arnuger, the classical approach. So we see that there is a classical approach, and this is more innovative approach. And what is very important that, the philosophy behind that this code should be, or there is at least an attempt to be created, to be adopted or accepted by the federations more or less in 2 years' time, based on goodwill agreement. So we are, matching, some activities at the same time, but in a very good, roadmap, and this will be a great help for us in our situation, not only solving our own national issues with a good governance, but at the same time being a part of European agreements, and again sharing different experiences from different countries, because as you said from the very beginning, is one thing, to be part of a theory part, and it would be excellent to live in that theory ideal picture house, but the way of implementation and the issue of implementation is different, and these kind of projects, they definitely are in a very much help for us as a state organization and federations, to help them to foster the project and common efforts. Okay, so I think, do we finalize? More or less, yeah, it's more than one hour, like a university, 1 hour, 15 minutes, university style. Yeah, so we see some names around. What was the biggest audience connected?
18.
18. Okay, 18 federations. So it's
Fantastic.
fantastic. One third.
One third.
One third. Yeah. But we will make an examination, afterwards for the rest who did not take a part.
Maybe, other federations today had meetings, debating with sports law, so also very important, meeting. We are, that's okay. It was just, to share and to speak, freely, not very, academical, but it was really nice.
And always record is good. So anytime you can comment and listen and make your own notes and understandings. Okay, so thank you for our invitees, to our guest lecture. Ačiū labai visiems dalyvavusiems. Lauksim iš jūsų pasiteiravimų, klausimų, komentarų ir planuojame savo veiklas ir tvirtiname savo planus šiems metams. Ir tikrai dar ne vieną kartą grįšime prie gero valdymo principų diegimo klausimų. Tai yra, planuojame organizuoti mokymus ir konsultacijas ir atitinkamai paraleliai organizuosime seminarus įvairiomis temomis ir pirmiausiai tomis temomis, kurias jūs apklausoje nurodėte kaip svarbiausias. Ir viena iš pirmųjų temų tai yra strateginio plano, norėčiau sakyti tobulinimas, bet kažkam galbūt kūrimas, bet daugumoje atveju tobulinimas. Tai šį seminarą strateginio planavimo klausimais planuojame balandžio mėnesį. Tai ačiū labai visiems, iki kitų kartų, gražaus vakaro ir iki malonaus.